I can smoke away this pain. I need a light, so I can smoke away this pain.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to Elevated Culture, brought to you by The Clinic. I am your host, Matthew Stafford, and with me once again is my good friend, Ryan Cook.
Thanks a lot for having me once again.
Thanks for showing up once again. Would have been awkward if I was doing this by myself. I mean, maybe not that awkward for me, but maybe awkward for everyone listening. So thank you so much for showing back up and showing that support.
I'm sure you're capable of pulling this thing on your own, though.
It might not have been as interesting, but you would have heard me blabbing on about something. I can guarantee that. And speaking of hearing, we are in a new month here for the clinic, the Elevated Senses, campaign that is going. And we were talking about the sense of hearing now. And that's kind of why we started this podcast and what this podcast is about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's probably a little bit difficult to hear cannabis, but I think this is, again, back to, maybe more of one of those metaphorical concepts here, surrounding the month. But I think it's a great opportunity, and it, like you said, this is really why we did the podcast. But for you guys to hear us and, hear kind of the raw, information from the clinic behind the scenes, be able to ask questions, have us field those and hopefully, through all of it, really understand, how much we appreciate, what you guys have patients and customers have done for us for so long.
Yeah, I mean, it's for you all to have your voice be heard too, because we've asked to hear from you, and some of you have definitely spoken out, reached out. We've appreciated the questions, the comments, everything. Everything is good. It's all of that interaction, and I think again to what you just said, that kind of metaphorical concept of hearing. You can't hear cannabis, but when you look at it a certain way, you look at regulations, you look at where we are now, 29 states, and you look at Canada legalizing it federally, all of these sorts of things. And that wouldn't happen without people speaking up and being heard and the culture coming together and making this movement. And we've seen it over the last, 9 years in Colorado. And it's been huge. And I think it's going to continue to come, and it's going to be coming a little bit quicker because everyone's kind of finding their ground and they're finding out what they're able to say, and they're realizing that they're able to say a lot more because it's much more widely accepted than I think maybe people thought it was 10, 15 years ago. When do you think that started changing?
I mean, no question here in Colorado, in 2000 with regulations starting to be put in place with caregiver laws. I think that's when it started. I guess I flashed to, thinking about hearing is that I have historically, at the very beginning of this, I mean, here I was doing general contracting work and really, committed career suicide here by, identifying that I was going to be moving into the cannabis industry in 2009. And I think by doing that, it really encouraged me to tell people what I did and really be an advocate for cannabis. And I think, that's really where a lot of the individuals that started early in this industry have absolutely had to look at it that way and have had to say, I'm going to get out there. I'm going to identify what I do. I'm going to do it in a positive way. I'm going to have do it in a respectful way so that, that the general population can really hear what we're trying to do.
I totally agree with you. And I think it's something that even when it came down to, I remember telling my parents that I was getting into the legal cannabis industry.
What are your parents cool?
They're super cool.
Okay.
So my dad actually said, listen, Matthew, the end of the day, it comes down to this. It's a product and it's a business, and that's nothing new. So you need to think about it that way. You need to understand that while it is this far-reaching, kind of grand thing that a lot of people have been hoping for such a long time, that in the end, it really is a business. And, you have to start learning to run that business, to work within that business and that industry, because it's not just nickel and diming on a corner. I don't think he said nickel and diming on a corner, but to that effect, and he said, I fully support it. He said, it's in an illegal medical market. I think it has a long way to go. And my dad is also someone who claims he has never smoked marijuana, but I don't know. I've stood next to him smoking a Pax pen quite a few times. So, and he also got me playing drums when I was in third grade. And he was a drummer for a band called the Trippers, but claims he's never done cannabis or anything else. So I don't know what to believe. But other than that, we're pretty open. He's very supportive.
Well, that's cool. I mean, you got to love dads. That's similar.
I
way
love
that,
your dad. Your dad's a great guy.
And there's actually a lot of people that may know him around these parts. My dad is a super charismatic guy, and I think has just completely enjoyed the opportunity to really be around people in the cannabis industry here, and get to know a lot of my staff, and I think it was awesome. It's awesome to have him around here. So big shout out, Mike Cook.
Big shout out. I mean that speaks volumes just in the interactions I've had and knowing him and knowing you. I mean, obviously your mom was supportive as well.
I mean, it's so funny that my mother, at the very beginning, I remember we opened the first dispensary in November of 2009, and we had a big grand opening party, and during the party there was we were doing patient recs. So we had a doctor's office that was actually inside of our facility, and my mother came through the door. Here's beginning weeks of this. I mean, these stores were pretty busy. And she walked in. I got her to come into the dispensary area, and she took 1 foot into the dispensary and stepped back, holding her nose. She didn't like the smell. She refused to go in. My mother was, she's an amazing lady and was raised in a way that a drug is a drug is a drug. And that's just how she always understood it. And, probably, you could count the number of times that, she had actually been intoxicated, on your hands, over the course of, most of her life. I mean, probably until we were of age, and then, got her to, partake a little more, or maybe we forced her into it. But no, my mom was definitely concerned. I mean, we were obviously a bit more on the cutting edge back then, and I think she was, she was afraid for her son that something was going to happen. And I think, again, this feeds into what we're talking about here. But I mean, I think they just, we needed to be heard, and because we were, being as vocal as we were, I mean, I think it happened at such an abrupt moment that it was shocking to a lot of people. But I think really it truly helped to pave the way.
I think it really did. When do you remember when you started noticing in kind of like the mainstream that the stigma and kind of that drug war, not necessarily drug war, I guess it's more of the scare tactics and that sort of thing started going away? Because even in the 90s, when I was much younger, in my teens and such, I still remember commercials, even though, some of them were for hard drugs, there were definitely still a lot more for marijuana. And now the ads I'm seeing have Meg the bud tender on it,
Sure. Sure. Meg's famous at this point, man.
Seriously.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, of course.
I bet she doesn't live in Colorado. I'm just going to say that.
Probably doesn't smoke pot.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, all of this has changed. It's so I mean, it's hard to say, what I guess I don't know the exact day where I saw this significant change. I was living, here I moved, to Colorado from Illinois, in high school. In Illinois, we were kids in high school, and people smoked pot. You know,
Yeah.
it was a thing there.
They still do.
You know, we came here and you know, I ultimately, my parents moved to Arvada, which for those of you who do not know the geography of Colorado, that's about a 15-minute drive through open fields, nothingness, just, you know, kind of rolling hills with beautiful, you know, backdrop of the Flatirons, you know, in Boulder in the background there. And you can make it up to Boulder from Arvada in about 15 minutes. There was the infamous hill in Boulder. And on the hill, you could legitimately walk up and get some of the best cannabis, you know, you could find anywhere for $50 an eighth.
Yeah.
Always $50 an eighth. But it was pretty amazing. You know, I mean, Boulder really opened my eyes to, you know, some of the quality of cannabis that was out there, you know, versus probably what I was getting in Rockford, Illinois. Shout out Rock Vegas.
Rock Vegas. Do you remember what your favorite strain was back then?
Oh, and you know what?
Like anything that stood out. Like I know blueberry was around forever back then, and still to this day I can tell when it's that same genetic. But your favorite, is there anything that stood out?
Well, in Illinois, we smoked chocolate tie.
Okay,
it was chocolate tie. That was the go-to. Out in my Boulder days, there was, you know, one that I could get access to on a pretty regular basis that I loved was Trinity.
Yep.
I love being able to access that, but you know, it was the more infamous in the day. But the Fort Collins cough.
Seriously,
I mean,
infamous.
It was unbelievable. I mean, but yeah. Blueberry ruled the day.
Yeah, blueberry did back then for a long time. I once got this one bag and it was called Crystal Chunk. And I'd never had it before, and it was crystal times deep chunk.
Yep.
And I just remember just that piney scent that it had, and it was so frosty. Looking at all those trichomes, it really did live up to kind of that crystally. This was way before diamonds, so you know it was actually on the flower. And I remember I got it, and then I immediately was like, I need to get a little more of that, and then I never saw it again.
You know, the chunk was actually one of the first one of the first strains we started with when we opened the clinic.
Really?
Yeah, we had Colorado Cabbage, Chunk, Sensi Star, Blueberry.
Of course.
Yeah.
Love the Sensi Star too.
Yeah, it was amazing strain actually.
It was.
And Godbud.
Okay.
So Godbud's been with us for quite some time.
Dude, great Godbud, dude. Godbud, dude.
Why don't you just marry it, dude?
Dude.
That's a shout out to one of our old employees.
Yep, still going strong after all these years. Still appreciate him, and it still lives on. So. Well, that was a nice little trip down memory lane. But anyway, we're back, new month. Ryan, it's been a couple of weeks since we've done this. I feel like I haven't seen you in a little bit, man.
I'm excited to say, and sad to say, my cowboy look is gone. I got my brace off. And couldn't have gotten it off any sooner because I was out in Vegas the other day. It was so hot.
Yeah, how was that, dude? So hot. It was ridiculously hot here. We were hitting triple digits.
Yeah, I think there's something to this global warming, people.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something. So pay attention if you have not been, and try and do a little bit, because a little bit will go a long way.
That's exactly right.
So you were in Vegas.
Yeah, and we went out there to work on. We've been working on an extraction machine for years. Super cool machine, and went out there to pick it up. It's been in a facility out there being tested and run, and so went out there, loaded it up, and I drove it back here. It was a beautiful drive all the way through Utah. There, it's
always a beautiful drive. Those canyons, man.
It's
when
gorgeous.
You're driving through them.
It's gorgeous.
Were you testing this machine at Area 51? I think that's a question we all want to know the answer to.
It seems like it because it is that effective.
Yeah.
It's some sort of space age technology, but we'll get that out to the public here soon. So,
well, it's been driven back safely
Yes.
through the beautiful canyon lands of southern Utah,
for sure.
back through Colorado.
You know, though, I have to totally. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I have to totally tell a story because when we were out there, and I actually with one of my buddies, and I've got to admit I didn't actually know the story to begin with. In the cannabis industry, if you don't know, when you are on the road here and looking at a lot of out of state projects and whatnot. I mean, we're in different warehouses on a pretty regular basis, kind of seeing what would work and checking different facilities and getting tours and ultimately with doing all of that, we walked into one of the facilities and there was a warehouse that had I would say it's probably 60,000 square feet, this warehouse. And I would bet a good portion, half of it, was blocked off and it was just an empty, facility. And so, in this, facility, it was just stacked, floor to ceiling, these boxes. And I believe it's these Juiceros.
Juicero. Right there. We got one right there.
And it's this, juicer. Actually, my buddy ends up saying to me, "Hey, do you know what you're looking at here?" I did not, but he ended up pulling up some articles for me, and super, super interesting that I thought we should talk about it today, only because I had a long ride back from Las Vegas and along the way. Yeah.
Well, the funny thing is that when you kind of brought this in today, I was like, dude, I know what a Juicero is.
You did. Not everyone does. I mean, I showed a lot of people today, and not everyone said they knew what this was.
I've totally known what this was, and it was because it was.
Because you're a techie guy, dude.
Yeah, no, it was. I follow a certain DJ, and on his social media post, A-Track, he is back in 2016, early 2017. He was posting a lot about his Juicero. And he was always posting, okay, this is the one that I'm, this is the bag that I'm about to press today. So if you guys don't know about this really quickly,
yeah.
So this is a juicer, but it is unlike any juicer that you've ever seen before because it also is very much a paperweight.
But walk them through the way that you knew about it. So how did you hear about it, and what were you?
Okay,
yeah.
So I heard about. I actually remember looking these up because I thought it was a great idea because I have a juicer and I do juice myself. So I remember seeing A-Track posting about this, and he had these pouches that he was ordering. And they had these barcodes on them, and it had this app where you could scan them, and it would tell you what farms these fruits and vegetables came from. Expiration dates, it wouldn't, squeeze the juice. If it was beyond a certain date, it would reorder all these things. So I went to the site and looked at it. And back then when I looked at it, it was $700 for this machine. And I kind of felt like that was a bit much, especially because the packets that you were buying. So you weren't buying like a regular juicer when you buy fresh fruit and you're putting, the fresh fruit through and everything like that. This, you're getting a bag, as I said a second ago. And what it's doing is it's squeezing this bag. And apparently, I looked into it quite a bit. And so this guy had made for 3 years trying to get his prototypes down, getting his different series of fundings, all of these different things. He did 12 different prototypes, right, on this machine that would squeeze a bag of vegetables and fruits. And it had 4 tons of pressure that it would press through so it could squeeze this out. Amazing technology from Silicon Valley, right?
Right.
I mean, everything out of there is a home run. So it was doing that. And it was kind of one of those things where it ended up becoming, a technology that kind of was a flop, because what happened was they were selling them for $700 after the guy spent 3 years, like I said, 12 different prototypes to make this thing. And this is the big catch, people. This is the big catch. He finally gets it there. He puts it out for $700. It's squeezing the juice. There's about 6-7 months of bad sales, so they lower the price down to $400, right? So it's $399.99. Sounds better than $400. And so they do that, and then all of a sudden there's this report that comes out. Turns out this 4-ton of force that is squeezing this bag is not necessarily needed, because you can squeeze the packets with your hands and in 2 minutes get the exact same amount of juice with the same amount of purity coming out of it.
Which you should absolutely look up one of these videos to watch someone squeezing it with their hands. Because in theory, okay, I think the food industry has been, kind of working on packaging fresh items, making it easier for people. Everyone is apparently too lazy to just take the actual fruit and stick them in the juicer.
You got to rinse it off first, man.
You need to have this special bag. But I mean, there were obviously some interesting tech that went along with it. I mean, this thing is not all, laughable.
Well,
I mean,
when the company ended up, it was, are we going to sell this and be done, or run this until we are actually bankrupt? It kind of was the technology, and some of the technology that saved them, instead of saying we're bankrupt, being able to and to their part, when they stopped shipping the bags, I will say this, they did give everyone their money back who had purchased a Juicero, because they couldn't get the bag, so it's basically useless. So the board did vote to do that, and they did offer them, if they reached out, that they would pay them back. But the technology, some of the technology within it was actually very valuable.
Well, and that's the story that that my buddy showed me was individual kind of talking about the machine and saying that he actually was down at a Goodwill and found a unit for $40.
At a Goodwill?
At a Goodwill, and $40, brand new in the box. And he was ultimately saying that he was buying it. He's going to put it in his attic, save it for years, and because this tech would be, interesting to individuals down the road. Because I mean, at the end of the day, almost every single component in this thing, if I understand it correctly, has been engineered specifically for this unit, and yet at the end of the day, it's a juicer. Right.
Yeah.
And so this is not some sort of space age technology. This is, if anything, it's a press, and yet they custom designed every component of it, I think, to patent it in a certain way. The reason, though, that I brought this up in the first place, and I thank you for sharing. You're always a wealth of knowledge, Matthew. But, the reason I brought it up is just because, at this point in time, and I think it's kind of an interesting, segue into really what's happening in the cannabis industry. I mean, we have started to see, a Canadian market emerge, really start charging in relationship to, really where the United States cannabis market is at. With ultimately October 17th going legal as a nation, yet they have already allowed, these companies to be on the public stock exchange. And so, some of these Canadian companies now in the US, we've had some companies that have attempted to go public, generally penny stocks. There's been a lot of corruption and problems with it. The SEC is definitely not on board, but and I think that will probably change over time as we see, federal changes. But right now, I think the plays are up in the Canadian market. And I mean, you have huge companies, emerging. I mean, Canopy, which is really probably the largest, cannabis company that we would know of internationally. And the number 2 would be Aurora. But both of those are Canadian companies. And, to put this in perspective, Canopy is worth $5.7 billion right now. Aurora is worth $4.6 billion. Those two companies alone are about 50% of the Canadian market.
Their Canopy's estimated expansion of just indoor and greenhouse production capacity is about 3.2 million square feet.
It's unbelievable. I think we've even talked about it on the show before, but I mean, really, Canada has uniquely positioned themselves to, to be able to provide cannabis to the world. I mean, the amount of square footage of product that they're growing will not be needed by the Canadian market alone. So,
Well, that's actually an interesting concept, because when you say the amount of product that they're growing will not be needed by the Canadian market, it leads me to think about some of the states, where we've seen here in the States where, there's too much product. I mean, we've been seeing it here in Colorado, and prices have come down over the years. I mean, but not to the extent of, say, Washington,
Sure.
Washington State, where there is this oversupply. And when you look at it right now from kind of like a state's point of view, where you're seeing that problem, and now with the comment that you just made saying that, eventually it's going to become, a national problem, what do you think when more and more countries come online? Do you think it's then tying into the innovation and the types of products that those countries are able to produce? Because we talked about it, I think, on the last podcast about how Canada's, being slow to roll out all of these other types of products. So do you think if, say, the United States or another country were to get on and be able to produce these other concentrates and things much quicker and get them to the global market, do you think that's something that would help? Or in the end, it's not really going to matter because it's going to be kind of this boom, and then everyone's eventually going to be able to do it, and then you're still oversaturated?
I mean, I guess what I'm, concerned about is that, yes, I mean, ultimately, if they start producing these products, they are going to sell them at an international level. It is going to, leave the U.S. market, solely relying on U.S. sales. And even though I know Trump has some problems with some of these tariffs and trade deals that we have with some of these other countries, I mean, the reality is that, we do operate at a global level. And I think that, I think our companies want to, want the same opportunities that larger corporations are having a chance at. So
I think so too. I think, looking at Canada, looking at Aurora, looking at Canopy, I mean, you're seeing that, but it brings up a really interesting kind of topic that, that ties back to this Juicero thing, which is really kind of the amount of investment that companies like that are doing, the amount of things that they're buying up just to get this market share, really, and maybe not necessarily knowing. And I don't know about Canopy Aurora, who they have looking into things, but I think that, some other investors, probably lots of other investors, not only on the international market, but here, nationally and within certain states, just hear marijuana, hear cannabis, think bunch of money signs, say they're in control of this hedge fund, or they have, a bunch of money to invest. And so they're just going to go with whatever the snake oilsman is selling them, that sort of thing, because they don't understand, because it is so new. And we've talked about a few minutes ago, kind of the hearing and how we've been able to come to where we are. And there's still a lot of uncertainty within certain margins of the population, but there are those that are willing to buy into it. Kind of like this Juicero thing, where you're raising millions and millions of dollars based off of something that I could squeeze with my hands.
Well, exactly. I mean, most of the investors at this point, I think there's a lot of people throwing money into these companies, and at the end of the day, it's hard to tell who's behind them. And that's been going on here since 2009, when you started to see a lot of these companies open, right? And it's going to continue to happen across the country, because people are excited about cannabis, right? I mean, just like they're excited about the world's most amazing juicer.
Yeah.
And if someone in Silicon Valley is telling you this juicer is the most amazing thing that you've ever seen, and here's your chance to throw money in the pot, it looks like a lot of people did it.
Well, and even more so, look at it in the way that the Juicero had all these celebrities. I heard about it through one of my favorite, DJs, through A-Track, and didn't know. And then I ended up going to the site and looking at it, almost buying into this thing, But it's kind of the same when you have other celebrity endorsements of companies and products, and they're not necessarily known for their advocacy or love of cannabis, that sort of thing. And it's a fine balance, because you do have those celebrities and those people in the spotlight who, have been advocates and or users, or, that sort of thing. And then you have others that you can kind of tell are just doing it because they're going to make their buck. They don't care about that kind of maybe they do, but I mean, you would think just off their name, they're like, I can make some money off this really quickly. In the end, if it doesn't matter, it's got my name and a bunch of other things, right?
I think so. I mean, I guess this too, it kind of, has me considering, the whole reason why we really began the clinic consulting in the first place too, because, seeing the amount of investment that is being put into a lot of projects, both here in Colorado and nationally and internationally, yet the individuals that are running these facilities may or may not have all the skill sets yet. This is a new industry. People are still learning, and I'm not even, giving anyone a hard time. I mean, there's a reality to a learning curve of a sizable agricultural facility and or laboratory or whatever it might be. And so, I mean, here, this is kind of part of our program, is that we're able to come in as clinic consulting, and from individuals like Matthew, myself. We've been in this industry for quite a long time now, about a decade, and have seen a ton. And I think it's very helpful for us to be able to step in at a certain point and warn someone that they're about to make a Juicero mistake, and that you need to be careful about the amount of money that someone is throwing at a facility when, these facilities are going to need to be updated on a regular basis. There are significant regulations that are going to continue to move forward, especially if we move into a federal legalization. And if you are not thinking about those kinds of things or not willing to invest the type of money needed, this probably isn't the industry for you.
Exactly. And kind of just, are you really in, kind of the way we were talking about with the celebrities. You can tell the ones who are in and those who are just trying to make a quick buck. Same with investors. Some are going to be so hands off and have not done any homework because they have so much money and it's just dollar signs that they're seeing. Someone else might be a little more apprehensive isn't the right word, but educated enough to want to know a little bit more and talk to you, and talk to, people like us and other people working in this, where we can say, we are still operating. We have been operating in this industry legally for close to a decade. And, not only are we continuing to operate, but we can also talk to you about the trends, talk to you about the issues that we've seen, the things that we see coming down the road, and can kind of tell you that, yeah, this is, if you're going to do this, be willing to do it long term, and I think that's kind of a big thing. You have to, if you're going in, it's kind of, you have to be all in. We were talking at the beginning of this podcast about talking to our parents about, that sort of thing about getting into the industry. And, back then, 10 years ago, I'm 33, I was 23, and I'm going into this legal industry, doing this. May not have told them that I'd done some other things, but anyway, it's one of those things where I'm going all in. This is something I'm passionate about. This is something I care about, and it's going to be tough. And I think anything anyone does who they're passionate about and cares about, they realize that it's going to be tough, but all the good is going to outweigh the bad. And you kind of got to balance all of those. And I think that's been something I've learned in this industry. And it's really helped me a lot personally, too, just with the amount of change that happens, being able to adapt quickly to regulation changes and things. That's almost like a lifestyle change in a matter of moments, because someone sent me a memo saying I'm never allowed to wear black jeans again, something like that.
Well, I mean, you're making me think of an interesting, topic. Just in general, I mean, obviously we have a lot more investment dollars like we're talking about coming into this. Well, along with that, we have larger corporations. I mean, I just referenced companies that are in the billions of dollars of net worth at this point. I mean, these are becoming corporations, and I think probably a lot of individuals got into this industry, sort of seeing it as the anti-corporation, opportunity. And so I just, really wonder, I mean, is it more passion or, real business sense that, these corporations are looking for, at this point?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think it also, if you look at even, people I've known who've worked in the industry, people I know, like you, a lot of our colleagues, they're very passionate about the industry. I've also known a lot of people, some of my best friends who worked in the industry and kind of had this idea of it should be this kind of, and I don't want to say just like anarchist, like, type of way, but they grew up the same time we did when you were buying weed off a dealer, and then it became cool that, medical was allowed, these sorts of things. But it eventually becomes a regulated business. You do something well enough, there's a market for it, and you can supply that market. It becomes a business. That's just the economics of it. And some people didn't want to see that, see where it's become. But I think the passion behind the people who they haven't been pushing for this to say, okay, I wanted to do this, so that a bunch of people I didn't know who've never smoked weed can make a bunch of money because they already have a bunch of money. It's been really about pushing it because this is something they believe that they shouldn't have to hide or, have a stigma attached to them because of it, because it helps them. It makes them feel good, whether medicinally, or just recreationally, and being safer than a lot of other things.
Absolutely. But I think
it's tough.
It's about being, and this is where we talk about the sense of hearing, but it's being an advocate for this and really having your voice be heard. And so, passion can be advocacy and at the end of the day, I think, those are the people that have really led the charge here. And, I'm proud to say that, I know a lot of those individuals and in fact, actually, one of them is going to be coming in on the next show.
One of them is going to be coming in on the next show. I know it's someone we teased pretty hard on the last episode. And then, unfortunately, this person is actually, such an amazing guest that they are actually so busy. They were going to graciously give us an hour of their time. But something came up in the last, kind of 48, 72 hours, something like that. So it's being rescheduled. But someone who's an amazing advocate, but also built something amazing that was looking at both sides of the coin and something first ever in the nation.
Absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and say it, but Ricardo Baca is coming on the show at the end of the month here, which I would highly encourage you to tune in. I mean, not only can you, which you probably just know Ricardo Baca's name, but Google him. You can find a lot of amazing stories and he really started as an advocate for cannabis. And I think that's, again, why we wanted to bring him on for the sense of hearing and allow you to really hear his journey, which has been amazing and ultimately moved in. And I'll, say a couple of things, but I mean, Rolling Papers was a movie that was sort of made about him. It's a documentary really covering the paper there and really, the Denver Post and his covering of cannabis as the first cannabis
recreational market coming on into play. I mean, it was definitely a big deal, and he's the first editor of a marijuana kind of outlet for this in journalism, mainstream, and it's a big deal. So Rolling Papers, I think is huge. If you haven't checked that out, check it out. I'm sure just Google whatever or just type it into whatever thing you use to watch YouTube and Netflix on, and I'm sure you'll find it.
I'm proud to say that I was interviewed by Ricardo on the Cannabis, and so that's always fun. He's done a lot of amazing interviews there. Now he's moved on to something else. He's got a new venture. It's called Grasslands. They consider it a journalism-minded agency. They're really doing public relations and really just helping make a positive impact on the cannabis industry. And so hats off to him and his entire team. They are a bunch of all-stars. I mean, the team is really stacked.
Definitely stacked. And I think, with what they're doing with Grasslands speaks again to kind of that sense of hearing, giving that outlet and the platform and being able to boost these voices and kind of get these stories out there, which is what he was, doing at the Cannabis also. And also anyone who, as we kind of mentioned earlier, known a lot of people who've been able to have their voice be heard and help push these things. But I think we also have to recognize that, you need a strong person and a strong voice to actually do that. But there are so many people behind that, supporting them and supporting that cause. And, they're up there pushing it, but there's a lot of people that, are supporting them and pushing that through. So, that sense of hearing and really talking, communicating and pushing these things goes a long way. And it goes much more than just what you see on TV or, hear on somewhere on the internet or something like that, or a podcast maybe.
Ricardo's a great guy, so I'm excited about having him on. I'm more excited about hearing what he's talking about.
I'm more excited about hearing what he's talking about too. I did have one final thought really quickly about this Juicero thing.
Yeah.
So the bags.
Yeah.
I kind of wonder what this technology was worth, because if they have the scanner and it tells you what local farms they're coming from, so they must have had some contracts with some local farms. So you're thinking like a distributor, type of license. You're seeing that a lot in cannabis now. But if they have this delivery system, even if it turns out that you can squeeze it, I don't think I've ever seen any like just squeeze your own juice packets. And here's what's interesting. They sold more than 1 million packs. I don't know the rate, but they were pretty expensive. I remember from when I was intrigued enough to look at it. And the average person was pressing 9 packs per week, the average Juicero owner. And you could only purchase them if you were a licensed Juicero owner. So, but don't you think once the machine's gone, that's your high seller, but you already have this outreach and these people who are buying them.
I mean, I think in any tech company, you better be working on V2 by the time you're releasing V1, right? I mean,
you better be thinking about V4 and 5, and just 3 is already coming after 2. So be thinking that much further ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, obviously, they didn't do it. Juicero's had plenty of problems. That's why we're really identifying him here tonight as what not to do. And that's sort of the buyer beware, that I think we were as sort of hinting around, when talking about investment in the cannabis industry. I mean, I think there are some incredible companies out there that are doing amazing things, but do your research, people. Just because it's a cannabis company does not mean it's a winner. It's a business just like any other business, and the Juicero proves it.
Very much so. Rest in peace, Juicero. It kind of looks like now it's just like a little tombstone sitting here on the desk.
It is. Don't become a Juicero.
Don't become a Juicero. With that said, I don't think we can end the podcast without doing a little "What You Token About."
I love this segment.
I love it too. So, yeah, I think I'm going to ask you first, Ryan Cook. What are you talking about?
Well, Matthew Stafford, I am always talking about some concentrates. That's for sure.
Yeah. Last week or 2 weeks ago, we had the Boss.
Oh,
who could forget that?
Some of those have been amazing. I still have some Boss. There's no question.
Yeah, you got some new though.
Well, you know what? I actually just had. I love batter. Today I was talking with another company who called it live butter. Live butter, batter.
Batter is better.
I know that we were really the first company to ever put that out on the market. So the fact that we called it batter, everyone should probably just roll with that. But
batter is better.
But I understood. He was identifying a live butter being a product that is sort of a whipped concentrate, and so that. Ultimately, I love them. I'm in the live, whether you call it live butter or batter. That's sort of been something that we've had as a staple in the clinic for quite some time. I know there's some new sexy, diamonds and sauce and all the other amazing products that are out there. But batter from my standpoint, I mean, you get an amazing flavor. The consistency is always incredible. The colors look great. It's just it's an amazing representation of the flower.
Yeah, and you get that little kind of oily terpene
I
sometimes.
love that.
It's really beautiful. I mean, don't want to speak for you, but I've been known to go down some rocky roads with those diamonds. But and then you come back and you go, oh man, I really enjoy that and that blend and being able to actually get all of that kind of full spectrum, full profile, a little more, as much as I like those rocky roads. I also like that kind of whipped smoothness.
That's
that the batter
that's why I
brings.
encourage people. I mean, pick up batter grams. If you are getting diamonds and sauce, that's great. Those are amazing products, and you should have those at home. But I think batter in general always allows just a little bit more ease of dabbing. The consistency of batter will give you some tackiness to be able to apply the either diamonds or some sugar or dip that in HTE. So I definitely encourage you to do something like that. But I've got some Skywalker batter right now that is absolutely amazing. I love the Skywalker.
Skywalker is so good.
Again, I'm just an OG guy. I like those Kush flavors, but I would also I would be remiss if I did not tell you, as I've commented before. I mean, I really enjoy using some of the CBD products, and we now have access to isolates that are out on the market. Something there's a new company that the clinic is carrying right now. It's called Tribe. And they're doing organic organic CBD products, but ultimately a dabbable product, which is amazing. CBD dabbable it really has like a cherry effect to it, so it creates an awesome flavor with some of the concentrates that are out there. But they've actually done some incredible blends, and these all are. If you look at it, it's a batter, right? I mean, or it's the most amazing concentrate because it just glimmers.
It's going to sound like this is scripted and we talked about this before, but I swear we didn't. I was actually going to say I was talking about kind of those Tribe CBD dabbables. Seriously? Yeah. We're carrying them. They're for sale, but I remember when they came and, had us do some sampling and testing. They were sampling the products for us, and they had kind of different ratios of CBD to THC. There was a 75%, 25%, and it was THC to CBD. Then there was a 50-50. And then, what they ended up with, that 25% to 75% THC to CBD, which I think is really nice because there are times where I want to take a dab, but have that little bit of extra relief, that sort of thing. I mean, I'm 33, man. I'm an old man, and I just started making jogging into my regimen, and that hurts your knees. And so a little bit of CBD, that'll kind of relieve you at the end of the day and help you out there.
It goes a long way. And I mean, I think there's some great, topical products that are out on the market that are incredible for pain relief. But I love, this is a what you talking about. And yeah. I love dabbing. And I think being able to have some CBD like that is a pretty incredible feeling.
I think it's also great that we're able to start being able to see and use products like this. It's a big deal. It's not something that you're seeing everywhere all the time, especially.
But so for anyone out there that maybe doesn't know what that effect is it's a complete body relaxation. But almost almost a sedative, if I could, sort of try to peg it to something, but has again some incredible cherry flavor, but no psychoactive effects whatsoever. So this is not THC. Okay, this is it's still a cannabinoid, just like THC is of cannabis, but this is CBD. This is cannabidiol, and it's really been known to be the most medically beneficial, product. And so that I can be clear for everyone out there, because I want to make sure that we're accurate about this. It's CBDA, which is ultimately decarboxylated and then turns into CBD. CBD is the active cannabinoid that I think most people are talking about. That's what's going to give you the pain relief and more of the relaxing feeling that you would receive from that. I mean, that's the way it affects me. I think that, most people see a similar effect. I mean, ultimately CBD is not a harmful substance. It, again, is not psychoactive. So it's interesting to try.
Yeah. And you have a natural endocannabinoid system, it's working with that. It's one of those things where I think I actually talked to a couple of my parents' friends, and they were asking me about CBD the last time I was home, and they were very interested. But when I was kind of describing it the way you sort of did, when you're talking about that feeling of kind of total body relaxation, and then you say, but it's non-psychoactive, that was a tough part for them to kind of get through their mind. And I had to kind of say, no, it's just kind of that feeling of relaxing, like you're kind of slowly slipping into a warm tub or something, something like that, where it's just, you can feel that you're relaxed. It's not that you're high. Yeah. You just feel that you're relaxed and you're getting some relief, especially if it's some sort of, I can only attribute it to myself for, aches and pains and some anxiety, but, I know it does wonders, for a lot of people in a lot of other areas. So
yeah, it's an amazing product. But anyway, Tribe is new to the clinic, so definitely go check that product out.
Yeah, definitely check out the Tribe products. And with that, Ryan Cook, I think we're kind of at the end of this episode. Like we said, we have a big one with Ricardo Baca coming up at the end of the month here. We still wanted to get an episode in between now and then to keep you guys in tune, keep you hearing us. Is there anything else you want to talk about before you get out of here?
Don't end up being a Juicero, people. Pay attention to what you're investing in out there.
I can 100% get behind that. So everyone, please feel free to reach out to us and be heard and interact, engage in the conversation. You can find us, just search The Clinic on Facebook if you haven't done that already. And on Instagram, it's The Clinic_Colorado, and it's Colorado spelt out. So hit us up there, or if you're feeling so inclined, send us a lovely email. You can do that at elevatedculture@thecliniccolorado.com. So I think the only other thing that I want to mention before we get out of here, Ryan, is that everybody listening, we do have the 9th annual Charity Classic coming up. That's coming up on Friday, August 10th. We have some amazing sponsors. We have amazing teams. This is something that's been going on for, 9 years. It's a big deal. I know you've talked about it before, but if you want to get involved, there's always opportunities for volunteering. So please reach out, go to the website, and you'll be able to find all the information there. I think there's still maybe one, maybe two sponsorships available.
I think there are 1 or 2 sponsorships remaining, and I think there's 1 foursome left.
So if you want to play golf too, get on that quick. And it's an amazing experience. It's an amazing day. And it's just a beautiful course. It really is. Arrowhead's just beautiful.
And we're going to raise some incredible money for a great cause for both the Rocky Mountain MS Center and the National MS Society, more specifically the Colorado Wyoming chapter. But, we're excited to do this and we love doing it every year. It's always beautiful. Come out and join us. Even if you ultimately are not a golfer or are not going to sponsor the event, you can buy a ticket to party, come out on the golf course, drink some beers with us, and and just enjoy the beautiful golf course.
We hope to see you there. So, Ryan, I think that's all I got for this episode of the podcast. I guess until next time, keep your culture elevated.